The Rikka archetype is an archetype of female water and plant monsters which debuts in deck build pack Secret Slayers. The name of this archetype, Rikka, is a poetic word meaning snow. However, the kanji used are those for 6 in flower, alluding to the usual 6-pointed interpretation of a snowflake, which can resemble a 6-leafed flower. Its members, except petal main deck Rikka monsters, Rikka Fairy, are named after cold-resistant flowering plants that originate from Europe and or Africa, and seem to be organised in pairs of even levels. The pair's members have mirrored attack and defence compared to each other, and the one with higher attack faces to the viewer's left, while the one with higher defence faces to the viewer's right. The Xyz monsters, which include Rikka Queen, are named after types floral ornaments, have equal attack and defence, and physically resemble both members with the same level as their respective rank. In terms of playing style, the main theme of this deck is tributing both players' monsters as an extra cost to you or as a form of monster removal for your opponent. With the Rikka Spell and Trap lineup, you have the option to tribute a plant monster or not to gain an extra benefit out of the card, such as Rikka Glamour, allowing you to add 2 cards instead of 1, or Rikka Sheet, allowing you to not only stop the target from activating its effects, but also take control of it. The deck also has a fair amount of level manipulation, allowing them to go into many even-leveled Xyz monsters. But be wary, because if you control a non-plant monster, Rikka Flurries will destroy itself at the end of your turn. The deck will attempt to control the board by summoning Teardrop the Rikka Queen, which allows you to disrupt your opponent's plays by tributing during either player's turn, if it has a plant monster as Xyz material, or using a Rikka Sheet to stop a key monster from activating its effect. The combination of plant and water is very beneficial to this deck, as it allows them to use powerful cards such as Aroma Cemetery, Jasmine, Moray of Greed, and Lone Flower Blossom. The weaknesses of the deck include, since Rikka archetype focuses on tributing monsters, several cards that can prevent tributing, such as Mask of Restrict, can hinder this archetype's play. As this card needs the support from water attribute and plant type monsters, cards such as DNA Surgery and DNA Transplant can effectively slow down this archetype. Cyclamen the Rikka Fairy is a water attribute plant type level 4 with 1800 attack and 800 defense. You contribute this card from your hand or face-up field, then target up to 2 plant monsters you control, reduce their levels by 2 until the end of this turn. During the end phase, if this card is in the graveyard because it was tributed and sent there this turn, you can express summon this card, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Cyclamen the Rikka Fairy once per turn. The summoning on this card is pretty easy, as it's a level 4 monster. It has 1800 attack points, so it's able to sustain itself, and by tributing this card, either from your hand or face up, you can take 2 plant monsters you control. Their levels are reduced by 2, and this helps you to go into various smaller rank Xyz plays or something equivalent to that. During the end phase, if this card was sent to the graveyard because it was tributed and set there this turn, you're able to instantly express summon it, so it does have a recovery, but it does banish itself when it leaves the field after this effect has resolved. Erica the Rikka Fairy is a water attribute plant type level 6 with 2400 attack and 1000 effects. When an attack is declared involving another plant monster, you contribute this card from your hand or face-up field. That monster you control gains 1000 attack and defense until the end of this turn. If a plant monster you control is tributed while this card is in your graveyard, except during the damage step, you can special summon this card in defense position, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Erica the Rikka Fairy once per turn. This is a decent monster. It's a level 6, but as soon as an attack is declared, provided it happens on another one of your plant type monsters, you are able to just tribute this card, either from the hand, so that's useful as it doesn't have to be tributed face up on the field to use its effect, and that monster gains 1000 attack and defense. Often this is a smaller version of Kalut or Honest, and even though it doesn't guarantee that your monster is going to be more powerful than your opponent's, it's more likely to at least sustain less damage to you and your life points. And if a plant monster you control is tributed, provided this card is already in the graveyard, you have some sort of recovery to be able to special summon this. It does have to go into the defense position, and it does get banished when it leaves the field after this. And since it's in defense position, it only has 1000 defense, therefore you need to run other cards in order to protect it. Helibor the Rikka Fairy is a water attribute plant type level 8 with 2600 attack and 1200 defense. When your opponent activates a monster effect that targets a monster you control, while you control a Rikka monster, as a quick effect you can tribute this card from your hand or face-up field, negate that effect. If this card is in your graveyard, you can tribute one plant monster, special summon this card in defense position, but banish it when it leaves the field. You can only use each effect of Helibor the Rikka Fairy once per turn. As soon as your opponent activates a monster effect that targets any of your monsters, provided you have another rikka monster already on your field, you can just attribute this card either from the hand or face up on the field, and that effect gets negated. It is a shame that it doesn't destroy the card that's activated its effect, but at least it stops it from using its ability. Provided this card is in the graveyard, by attributing a plant monster you control, you can instantly special summon this card in defense position. It does have only 1200 defense and therefore is susceptible to beaten over in battle by other monsters your opponent controls, and when it does leave the field, it has to be banished. Therefore, you need to run banished style recovery cards to bring this card back. Kanzashi, the Rikka Queen, is a water attribute plant type Xyz monster. It's a rank 6 with 2400 attack and 2400 defense. It needs 2 level 6 monsters, and if a monster is attributed except during the damage step, you can detach one material from this card, then target one monster in either graveyard, special summon it, but negate its effects. Also, it becomes a plant monster. If a plant monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can attribute one plant monster from your hand or field instead. You can only use each effect of Kanzashi, the Rikka Queen, once per turn. The Rikka monsters alternate in terms of levels. There are some that are level 4, there's some level 6, not some that are level 8, and they can adjust their levels to meet their requirements very simply. As soon as a monster is attributed outside of the damage step, you're able to detach a material from this card. Then you can target one monster in either graveyard, and it gets special summoned. The special summon monster does have its effects negated. Imagine if it's from your opponent's field and their graveyard, that will then be treated as a plant type monster. If a plant monster you control would be destroyed by a card effect, you can just attribute a plant monster from your hand or field instead. So you can actually use the first effect to rely on the second effect. You can just attribute off your opponent's monster that you've revived from the graveyard to protect your plant monster from being destroyed by card effects. Luzan, the Rikka Fairy, is a water attribute plant type level 6 with 1000 attack and 2400 defense. You can attribute one plant monster, special summon this card from your hand. If this card is normal summoned or special summoned by the effect of a plant monster, you can add one Rikka spell trap card from your deck to your hand. You can only use each effect of Mudan, the Rikka Fairy, once per turn. This, being a level 6, isn't always too easy to bring out, but so long as you attribute a plant monster, it can be brought out instead of having to tribute. It means that you're not wasting your normal summon. As soon as this is either normal or special summoned by the effect of a plant monster, you're able to search for a Rikka spell trap from your deck to your hand, so it adds to consistency of the deck. Primula, the Rikka Fairy, is a water attribute plant type level 4 with 800 attack and 1800 defense. If a monster you control is attributed except during a damage step, you can special summon this card from your hand in defense position. You can target up to 2 plant monsters you control, increase their levels by 2 until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Primula, the Rikka Fairy, once per turn. As soon as a monster you control is attributed, this card is instantly able to be special summoned from the hand. It does have to be in defense position, but the likelihood is that you will adjust the levels of certain monsters that you have by 2 to make them probably either level 6 or into level 8 to go into your 6 or rank 8 Xyz monsters. Rikka Petal is a water attribute plant type level 1. It has 0 attack and defense. During your main phase, you can take one Rikka monster from your deck except Rikka Petal and either add it to your hand or send it to the graveyard. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except plant monsters. During your opponent's end phase, while this card is in the graveyard, if you control no monsters or all monsters you control are plant monsters, you can special summon this card. You can only use each effect of Rikka Petal once per turn. The first bit of the effect, just during the main phase, you're able to take a Rikka monster from the deck, except itself, and it either goes straight to the hand or straight to the graveyard. Therefore, you can have it as like a Foolish Burial style of effect. You're limited and locked into plant-type monsters for the duration of the turn, but that's not really a downside. And during the opponent's end phase, provided this card is in the graveyard, so long as you either have no monsters or every monster that you have control of is a plant monster, this card can be special summoned, so it can have ways of reoccurring itself. It's necessary as some of the high-level Rikka monsters are level 6 or level 8, and even within their own effects, they often require a tribute of a plant monster to bring them out. This can pretty much act as part of or the entire cost of that. Rikka Princess is a water attribute plant type level 4 with 0 attack and defense. During the main phase, you can special summon this card from your hat, but while it is face up in the monster zone, you cannot special summon monsters except plant monsters. When your opponent activates a monster effect while you control a rikka monster, as a quick effect you can shuffle this card from your hand or graveyard into the deck and attribute one plant monster, negate that effect. You can only use each effect of Rikka Princess once per turn. First part of the effect just lets you special summon this card from your hand, but whilst it's face up in the monster zone, you are locked into plant type monsters. As soon as an opponent activates a monster effect, so long as you have a Rikka monster also on your field, by shuffling this card from the hand or graveyard into the deck and attributing a plant monster, you get to negate that effect. I'd argue that's quite a steep cost, as not only are you having to shuffle this back, but you're having to tribute a plant type monster to use that effect. But given that how they work on tributing over your opponent's monsters to activate the effects of plant type monsters, that isn't necessarily a downside. Rikka Queen Strenna is a water attribute plant type Xyz monster. It's a rank 4 with 2000 attack and defense. It requires 2 level 4 monsters, and you can detach one material from this card, then target one plant monster or Rikka card in your graveyard, add it to your hand. If this card with Xyz material is tributed, you can special summon one rank 5 or higher plant Xyz monster from your extra deck or graveyard, then you can attach this card to it as material. You can only use each effect of Rikka Queen Strenna once per turn. It's a very easy summon, as it just needs 2 level 4 monsters. It doesn't even have to be in archetype or have to be the plant type monsters. By detaching a material from this, you're able to recover a plant monster or a Rikka card from your graveyard, and it goes back to the hand. Provided this card has an Xyz material and it's tributed for any reason, you can then special summon a rank 5 or higher plant Xyz monster from your edge deck or graveyard, and then it gets this card attached as material. That can be useful because it's the rank 9 monster, the Periton, which has an ability that negates a spell, a trap, or a monster each and every turn, providing you with quite easy access to cards which typically aren't too easy to summon within plant archetypes. Snowdrop the Rikka Fairy is a water attribute plant type level 8 with 1200 attack and 2600 defense. You can tribute one plant monster, special summon both this card and one plant monster from your hand. Also, you cannot special summon for the rest of this turn except plant monsters. You can target one plant monster you control. All plant monsters you can currently control become that monster's level until the end of this turn. You can only use each effect of Snowdrop the Rikka Fairy once per turn. It seems like a bit of a steep cost, as you do need to tribute a plant monster, but you're able to special summon both this and an additional plant monster from your hand. And it's not exclusive to the archetype, it can be any plant monster. It does lock you into summoning plant monsters for the duration of the turn, but that's fine for the deck. And then you can target a plant monster you control. All plant monsters you currently control become that monster's level. So this is a way of adjusting the levels to either bring out your rank 4, your rank 6, or your rank 8 monster without having to run all these other variations of card supports. I think there's things such as Messenger and Bottle, which can be quite tricky to use. You have other cards which are like Starbright, Starlight, and there's another one which is like Tannhauser Gate, which is quite restrictive. It lets you get to the certain levels that you want, but these cards often meet certain conditions and do come with some significant downsides. Teardrop the Rikka Queen is a water attribute plant type Xyz monster. It's a rank 8 with 2800 attack and defense. It needs 2 level 8 monsters, and you can detach one material from this card, then target one monster on the field. Tributed, this is a quick effect if this card has a plant monster as material. You can only use the effect of Teardrop the Rikka Queen once per turn. Each time a monster is tributed, this card gains 200 attack for each until the end of this turn. The summoning on this isn't too difficult, as the deck likes to work and adjust levels to level 8, bringing this out within its own archetype. By detaching material from this, you can target a monster on the field and it gets instantly tributed. That can be a decent effect, and provided you have plant monsters as material, this can be activated during yours or your opponent's turn. It can only activate this effect once per turn, but often cards that are tributed can no longer use their effects from, for example, the graveyard. Once the monster is tributed, this gains an additional 200 attack for each until the end of the turn, therefore making a 3000 attack monster. Rikka Flores is a continuous spell card. If a Rikka monster you control is tributed except during the damage step, you can make your opponent tribute one monster they control, their choice. You can only use the effect of Rikka Flores once per turn. Once per turn during your opponent's end phase, if you control a face-up non-plant monster, destroy this card. This card has the ability to make your opponent tribute one of the monsters that they control provided you have a rikka monster that has to be tributed. It's a decent way of preventing your opponent from going into their specific plays or to set up. But bear in mind that if you do happen to control a non-plant monster during the opponent's end phase, this card isn't sticking around on the field as it will self-destruct. Rikka Glamour is a normal spell card. When you activate this card, you can also attribute one plant monster to add one Rikka monster from your deck to your hand. Then if you attributed a monster when you activated this card, add a plant monster with the same original level as that Rikka monster, but a different name, from your deck to your hand. You can only activate one Rikka Glamour per turn. As soon as this card is activated, you're just able to tribute a plant monster and search for a Rikka monster from the deck to the hand, so it's a consistent form of search for the Rikka archetype. And if you tributed a monster when you activated this card, you're then able to add a plant monster. So long as it has the same level as the Rikka monster that you've just searched, that can also come out, but it doesn't have to be in archetype style of card. Rikka Con is a field spell card. If you control a Rikka monster, you can set one Rikka spell or trap card directly from your deck to your spell and trap zone. Also, you cannot special summon monsters for the rest of this turn except plant monsters. You can only use this effect of Rikka Con once per turn. Once per turn, if you would attribute a plant monster you control to activate a Rikka card or effect, you can attribute any one face-up monster your opponent controls, even though you do not control it. When this card is activated, since it's their field spell, it helps you provide certain forms of advantage. Provided you have a Rikka monster, you are able to set a Rikka spell or trap directly from the deck to your spell and trap zone. You are locked in to plant type monsters, but this can be used each and every turn, provided you have a Rikka monster. Each turn, once per turn, if you would tribute a plant monster that you control to activate a Rikka card or effect, you're able to tribute any one face-up to your opponent controls. It's a shame that it has to be a face-up monster and it cannot also target their opponent's face-down monsters, but it's a way of removing some of their biggest threats before they have a chance to activate anything. Rikka Sheet is a normal trap card. Target one face-up monster your opponent controls. Also, you contribute one plant monster. Players cannot activate that face-up monster's effects on the field this turn. Then, if you tributed a monster when you activated this card, take control of that monster until the end phase. And if you do it, becomes a plant monster. You can only activate one Rikka Sheet per turn. The ability lets you target a face-up monster the opponent has. You do have to tribute a plant monster to activate it, but players cannot activate the face-up monster's effects on the field during the turn, so it's a way of negating permanently for that turn them using that particular effect. If you've tributed a monster to activate this card, you can then take over that opponent's monster, and it becomes a plant type, which you can obviously use as part of the summoning into one of your Rikka Xyz monsters. Rikka Tranquility is a normal trap card. When you activate this card, you can also tribute one plant monster, special summon one Rikka monster from your graveyard in defense position. Then if you tributed a monster when you activated this card, special summon one plant monster from your graveyard in defense position. You can only activate one Rikka Tranquility per turn. This is designed so that as soon as it's activated, you just tribute a plant monster to take one of your Rikka monsters from your graveyard and it goes into defense position. It's a way of recovering. Then, provided you tributed a monster as soon as you activated this effect, you can then special summon any plant monsters from your graveyard in defense position, therefore enabling you to get up to 2 cards, which you can hopefully use as part of the Xyz summon into one of Rikka archetype's monsters. This represents the entire archetype of the Rikkas. They're decent, but they often are not enough within themselves. Fortunately, we've got so many different plant-type monsters that work quite well within the deck. Lone Flyer Blossom, you've got the Gemini version of a plant monster, which lets you special summon each and every turn. You have Titanial, which is one of the large level 8 plant monsters that helps to negate effects by attributing other cards. And you have other cards as well, such as like Cherry Blossoms. There's one like that, which is also a high-level monster, which protects your plant-type monsters from card effects. I'd love to know what you guys think of this archetype and whether you are going to be using it in events such as the Yu-Gi-Oh! Master Duel one, which is running at the moment. Make sure to like the video, it really helps support the channel, and it'd be great if you could subscribe. Thank you.